Welcome to the channel. This is Yasira, the spiritual samurai. You're not crazy for embracing your solitude. You're gonna realize that having a lot of friends is actually it's actually a detriment. People who have a lot of friends tend to lose themselves because they always want to. It's like they become like a hive mind. They become one. And that's not always a good thing. It could be a good thing if there's common values. Humans have become slaves to algorithms. They want to be just like the celebrity that they follow or influencer. One thing that I've definitely noticed throughout life is that I've noticed that people get lost dealing with the wrong friends. Having the wrong friends is going to cause you a lot of turmoil, lost opportunities, lost love life. A lot of curses can come into your life when you decide to be a part of a toxic friend group that is very determined to keep you at a low frequency, keep you from actually attaining the things that you want. You'll be surprised by how many people in your circle are plotting against you, or they really don't like you like that. And you might think that sounds so cynical. Why would you say that? Because you'll be surprised by people that will betray you. You never know. One thing about me is that I've always had a very strong mindset and very, very accurate discernment. And I think that's why people are afraid of me, to be honest, because I know that people get really uncomfortable because they feel like I know something about them. Like they figure that I know that they've been talking bad about me. And people are very weird creatures. You're going to find that out. But when you're somebody that is destined to elevate, you are going to encounter a lot of weird shit. Most people, it's like they can't really stand to be in your presence for too long, because then they feel like you can read them. They feel like you can see right through them, and you can sense that vibe of uncomfortability. Like they just feel that anxiety, like your eyes are penetrating through them. And a lot of people are not ready for that. That could be very intimidating. And when you're a very emotionally intelligent person, you can spot this from people. It becomes very easy. And again, that's one reason why you can be an amazing person, but you tend to be by yourself a lot of times. And mainly because you don't want to drain your energy. You have a lot to do. You can't be wasting your time going out all the time, because you're not a drinker, you're not into drinking, and people act weird. People think that there's something wrong with you because you don't want to get intoxicated with them. I already got that out of my system, when I was in my teens. So drinking to me is not impressive. I've already outgrew that, because I used to man, I was like a little alcoholic in the making, drinking, putting Four Locos inside of a plastic water bottle so that the teacher thinks that I'm drinking water, but it's really Four Locos, shit like that. So, there you go. And I was seeking that depressant. I didn't want to think about anything. And what I mean by that is that I did not want to be idle-minded. I was so the traumas were fresh in my mind at the time, and that's what made me want to really drink and stuff like that. It was like something that I felt like I needed to slow down in a way. It's like to help with my anxiety too, and to help with my just feeling of despair. It kind of like relaxes you, puts you to sleep, because I had a hard time sleeping. So there you go. That's just a little background story. But now, like I said, once I reached the age to where I can actually buy it, right? That's when I didn't want to drink anymore, like in my 20s. So, when I would encounter people that they just look at you funny because you don't want to get drunk with them. And I noticed that people get offended by that. Or even if you don't smoke. I've never been a smoker. Have I smoked before? Yes, I have, but I still would not consider myself a smoker because it wasn't something that I did often. I tried it out and I didn't really like it, like for a little bit. But I realized that when I was smoking, I was around people that smoke. So a lot of times the company you keep, it makes a big difference, because now they're going to want you to do it, But you get to a point where you're like, I don't even like this shit. And plus, smoking is not good for you know, for your reproductive organs, your lady parts. It's not good for that. It's going to make it smell bad, and we don't want that. I'm all about health and fitness, so that does not align with how I want it, with my lifestyle overall. And some people take that as offense. They get offended because you're on a whole nother level right now. You're all about health. You're all about taking care of yourself in every aspect. And a lot of times you're not even craving it. You don't crave the drink. I don't crave getting drunk. I don't crave it. I'm not like, oh, I gotta have it. Like, people look at you like you're an outcast. It doesn't bother me what other people do. However, for some reason, people get so bothered when we don't want to do what they do, and what they're doing it's not even good for you. So that's what I find interesting about people. A lot of times, if this is you, if everything that I'm describing sounds like you, then most likely you're a loner because you've reached a high level mindset. You have a growth mindset, and most people don't have that. Especially if you come from a hopeless place, if you come from a low socioeconomic background, if you had childhood traumas like SA and stuff like that, you didn't have it easy. You didn't come from privilege or anything like that. And then now, if you have a mindset like this that is set on discipline, doing better, and actually having the desire to have a clean temple, is not something that you have to force. It's already naturally within you because you've already, like I said, when you do the work, it naturally works for you. It's kind of like you're not chasing the money. You let the money come to you, right? You attract the blessings through your presence. And how? When you increase your market value, the health, the financial, the mental health, the spiritual, all these different areas. When you invest so much into yourself, you're gonna see that you become a hot commodity that attracts the right people into your life, whether it's friendships, business partners, significant other, things like that, opportunities. You will just have that glow, and that's how that works. And I know because I've lived that. But I'm in a point where I'm not desperate for a job. It used to be a time when I was desperate for it, to the point that I would work in kitchens and stuff, and I didn't have the skills that I have now. But when you're desperate for something, you tend to repel it. When you're chasing something, it runs away from you. The same thing applies to dating and finances. You notice that when you're chasing the money, but you're not really taking the time to sit back, relax, and try to build upon your skill set. Try to work on different things. Learn new things. Sometimes you gotta get out of your comfort zone to learn some things that you might think is difficult, but it turns out that you are an expert at it. And all it took is for you to have a little bit of faith for you to get it going. So whatever you're chasing, just like if a guy that's like chasing and simping for a woman and she has no interest in him, it's kind of the same thing. We can apply it to the other gender too. When you have a desperate woman constantly wanting to impress some guy, right? The guy is not interested in women that are easy to get, right? Because so whatever you're chasing is gonna be repelled by you. They're gonna be like, to the point they'll be disgusted by you, or maybe they don't want nothing to do with you. It's almost like that's not how that works. You want to be the attractive figure here. You want to be the one that attracts opportunities, people, and things like that. So again, when you reach that level, it's going to be like that. You're not going to have a lot of friends. This is the irony too. You're not going to have a lot of friends, because the reason being is that, like I said, if you come from the bottom, if you come from a hopeless place, there's not going to be a lot of people that will relate to you, because you're kind of in the middle. It's like the people that, and no offense to nobody, okay, but very few people really make it far, especially if they came from a very difficult background. So you're gonna find that the people that you grew up with, they're not gonna relate to you, because now you're on a whole nother timeline, right? You're on a different path than them. And so you move out of state or you move out of the country, whatever the case is, and then you find yourself meeting different people, seeing people, and then you see like, and it doesn't have to be dating, it's just observing, and you notice that a lot of these people are vastly different from you. They don't come from the same background as you, so now you got people that are so privileged, they grew up with, their parents paid their way and all that stuff, or stuff that you never had. You never, they have opportunities that you never had. They were never put in the state of survival mode. They talk about their childhood in such a way where you're just like, you can tell that this person was never abused growing up. They don't have any major traumas that could have scarred them, to the, they didn't have that. So it's hard to relate. You kind of feel a little alienated. And I think this is the part where we feel like trauma became our identity. That's when we have to, but once you heal from all that, you're gonna feel like, okay, there's more to me than this, right? But that's still a part of you, because that's what made you who you are today. So it's not like you can talk to them, or it's not like, well, you can talk to them, but you're out of your element, you see? So it's like no matter where you go, you're out of your element. And so that's another reason why you're by yourself, because you came from a hopeless place, and then you rose to such greater heights to the point that you can't relate with the people that you grew up with, and you also cannot relate with the people that you're now around, because they don't understand. They've never been in your shoes. They had a head start and you didn't, but you still made it to their level, if not higher. And that could also be intimidating for both people you grew up with and also the new people that you're encountering that had a better start in life. So overall you're just an intimidating person to them, to a lot of people actually. Now, does this mean I'm a perfect person and I've always been right? Not necessarily. I had to work on myself because I had my own problems, but at least I get to it. I admit that, and I took accountability, and I did what I needed to do. So I am very confident in where I'm heading at this point. Not to mention, I've chosen to heal and evolve instead of becoming a monster, because I could have become a toxic ass abusive monster if I chose to. But I use my free will to become better than that, to rise above all that, to rise above the hatred that was living inside of me, the darkness. The darkness tried to spread throughout my whole temple. But at this point, you have to choose what spirit you want to feed. Whatever spirit you choose to feed will lead you. And because, again, sometimes you gotta go against the grain, because you got a curse mark. I had curse marks. And when I say curse marks, this is more like in a figurative sense. A curse mark, but it's very real. The curse mark of SA, for example, I have those. These are scars that you have psychologically and a little bit physically too. There was a violation, penetrates through the soul, causing you to lose yourself. And a lot of times you might think to yourself, how do I know if I lost myself when I never knew what myself really is? Because when you go through SA trauma at a very early age, like under the age of 5, like me, hey, that's supposed to fuck you up in so many ways. There's people that still think that, a person that goes through a lot of things like that, somehow they think that we're terrible people and stuff like that. And that's not the case. And you know what's so interesting about people that think like that? They seem to be very simple-minded, because I've seen people that grew up with no trauma, grew up privileged, and they're like the biggest assholes. In some cases, they're the biggest assholes because they never knew how to go without. They don't know how to deal with adversity. They don't know how to overcome shit. They'll bitch about any little petty thing, and you just look at them like, you are weak as hell. You're weak as shit if you're gonna sit there and throw a tantrum over some Karen shit. Get just Karen shit. Just complaining about nothing. Wow, you have people going through real hell, have real problems. So that's another thing too. So I'm not even mad at the trauma. See, when I talk about when I share my testimonies and when I share my stories, I'm not doing it for pity. I do it because it's me taking back my power. It's also me sharing light with others, and also me inspiring and empowering people that have been in the same position as me, and letting you know that it is possible for you to get to where you want to get. Because the only person that truly understands are people like us, survivors. We understand. We're still human beings. Just because we went through certain situations in our childhood, that doesn't mean we're awful people. Sometimes we could be the most amazing people you'll meet. You will have no idea. If you ever, anybody that's met me in person, they look at my face, and you would never think that I've been through what I've been through. I know how to keep that hidden, because that's not something that you just casually want to talk about. It's not something that it's not you don't want to paint that picture to people, because there's a time and place for everything, and I respect that space. I respect that, and I know, because hey, this is why therapy is important. But if you can't get therapy, you can do what I did, and you could start writing, you can start journaling. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I've said a lot in this video. I really appreciate the sudden spurt of growth in my subscribers that I've noticed. Hopefully it keeps going.